All right, how's everybody doing? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be a little different. Normally I bang on the abos, but this video is about the Olmecs. And the reason why I'm doing this video is because I ran across a video by this YouTuber. I don't want to mispronounce her name, but is Cultural Ancestral Nicaraguense. I guess that's how you pronounce it. I'm not sure. She made a video. She has 3 videos out dealing with the Olmecs. And the first video is entitled "The Olmecs Were Not Black." And so basically she's going in on African Americans who suggest that the Olmecs were African. And she basically is trying to suggest that they were never Africans. They were the people who live there now. In essence, she is the descendant of the Olmecs. Now, throughout her whole presentation, she offers no proof that she is, or people like her, are the descendants of the Olmecs. Now, I believe truly that I'm not confident that Africans were the first people in the Americas, but I do believe Africans were in the Americas prior to Columbus. There is no doubt about that. So when someone suggests that Africans were never there, I have a problem with that. There's too much evidence to suggest that Africans were there. So what I want to do, I'm going to walk through some of the arguments she made and try to, deal with them, each one. Now, she talked about the fact that there is no evidence of black people being there, and she used the comparison of diseases. She said that when the Europeans came, they brought a lot of diseases, and they left their mark in the Americas. So she's saying, well, if the Africans came, what did they leave? And she made a kind of I don't know if she really knew what she was doing, but she made a racist statement because she said something about black people live with animals, so somehow they should have been filled with some kind of diseases, but they didn't leave no diseases there. Now, where did she get that image or that belief that black people or Africans live with animals? I don't know. She didn't make any mention of Europeans living with animals. And, not to cast any disparaging commentary on Europeans, but those individuals, they sleep, drink, have sex with their animals. A lot of them. Some countries, they make laws, or they trying to get laws so they could legally sleep with their animals. Africans don't do that, but these people truly do that. And so where did she get that from? I have no clue. Now, I'm going to demonstrate this real quick. Now, here is a article, and let me see if I can bring it down real quick. Okay, let's see. The name of the article is Africans. Let me see if I can move this back a little bit. No, that's okay. The name of the article is "Why Do Africans Living in Africa Rarely Have Pets?" So I'm going to read this briefly. It's by a guy named Steve Hayes, former senior editor and junior lecturer at University of South Africa. Probably because of having animals as pets in the urban middle class is a middle class thing. And in the urban middle class in Africa is relatively small when compared to Europe or North America. Rural people in whatever continent mainly keep working animals. They keep cats to catch the mice that eat the corn. They keep dogs to herd other animals or to help with hunting. Even if they're fond of animals, they are not really pets. Now, when I was growing up, I'm in my 50s, and I remember when I was a kid, I wanted a dog. My dad wasn't going for it. because he said that, you know, dogs supposed to be outside. And if you're African American, you know that to be the case. If you're from the Caribbean countries like Jamaica, all animals stay outside. We do not live with animals. So wherever she got that information from, I haven't a clue. Okay? So I found that to be a little racist to say that black people live with animals. And we didn't leave any diseases there, that affected their people. So obviously we weren't there. What we left you there, what we did leave you was sickle cell trait. Many people in South America have sickle cell trait. That's what we gave you. That is the gift that we gave you. We gave you the ability to be immune to malaria. Many of you carry that trait. That's what we gave you. But you didn't know that. But I'm letting you know. Now you know. Okay? Now she made another argument about the lack of black people in South America. Okay? Now here is the blackout, how Argentina eliminated Africans from its historical history and conscience. Okay, let me see. Let's read a little bit of it. 10 millions of black Africans were forcibly removed from their homelands from the 16th century to the 19th century to toil on the plantation and farms of the New World. This so-called Middle Passage account for one of the greatest migrations of people of human history, as well as one of the greatest tragedies the world has ever witnessed. Okay, millions of these helpless Africans washed ashore Brazil. And so let's move on, because we all know that story. Okay, I'm going to try to get to the part. Okay, here we go. History, and let me see if we can find right here. Let's go right here. Let's do this right here. Historians generally attribute two major factors to the sudden mass disappearance of black Africans from the country: the deadly war against Paraguay in 1865 and 1870, in which thousands of blacks fought on the front lines for the Argentine military, as well as various other wars, and the onset of yellow fever in Buenos Aires in 1871. Okay? The heavy casualties suffered by black Argentinians in the military combat created a huge gender gap among African populations, and circumstances that appear to have led black women to mate with whites, further diluting the black population. Many other black Argentinians fled to neighboring Brazil and Uruguay, which were viewed as somewhat more hospitable to them. Others claimed something more nefarious at work. Okay? So there was definitely an attempt to get rid of the black folks. Okay? It has been alleged that the president of Argentina from 1868 to 1874, Domingo Faustino Sarmiento, sought to wipe out blacks from the country in a policy to convert genocide through extremely repressive policies, including possibly the forced recruitment of Africans into the army, and by forcing blacks to remain in neighborhoods where disease would decimate them in the absence of adequate health care. Now, I'm not going to read the rest of it, but it's clear that Argentina is mostly white, not because blacks never was there, because this country eliminated black folks from there. Brazil is another country that has done the same thing. Okay? Let me see if I think that was Jamaica, but I'm trying to find Brazil. Jamaica wasn't successful in trying to do it. Let me see what else is here. Jamaica wasn't successful. Oh, let's do it this way. Oh yeah, here we go. I'm sorry. Let's go back here. Okay, like I said, the 5 nations that imported Europeans to whiten the population. Okay. Brazil is one of them. Let me see. Let's find the part about Brazil. Okay, maybe it's not on this page. Let's try page 2. because I want to read that about Brazil, because I think that's important. Yeah, here we go. Brazil. Okay. Brazil. Brazil whitening ideology gained support from two scientific racist beliefs that were prominent during that time. One being social Darwinism, which applied to Darwin theory and natural selection to a society or a race, and the other being Aryanism, the belief that whites and Aryan race were superior to all other cultures. By combining these two ideas, a certain portion of Brazilian power elite believed from roughly 1880 on that the nation would be whitened and thus improved as whites will be improved if whites were encouraged to mate with blacks. To further ensure that blacks became whiter, a series of laws were passed prohibiting the immigration of black people to the country. In 1945, the Brazilian government issued a decree favoring the interests of European immigrants to the country, and an admission of the immigrants, the need to preserve and develop and an ethnic composition of the population is more convenient feature of their European ancestry shall be considered. Now, clearly, there was an attempt to get rid of black folks in South America. So they use the argument that there are no black folks in South America somehow strengthen your arguments. That's because you don't know the history of these countries. They're trying to eliminate black folks and thereby stealing black history. The Olmec culture, that's what you're doing, Miss Cultural Ancestral. That's what you're doing. Unknowingly, that's what you're doing. They did it in Egypt as well. Now, many Eurocentrists and Egyptologists get mad at black folks because they say that the ancient Egyptians were black. But they were. There's enough evidence out there to prove that. Okay? I'm going to give you a quick example because I'm not going to spend too much time because this is not the part of the but I just want to draw a correlation of how blacks come to that conclusion. And we're called delusional when the evidence is right in front of us. Okay? Now, there have been many DNA tests done on royal Armana mummies. And the results of those tests came back mostly African ancestry. Mostly African, West, South, and Central Africa. Now, that test was done by a DNA company called DNA Tribe. You can go on YouTube and you can look at it for yourself. Okay, here's another DNA company called DNA Consultants, and they did a test on King Tut. Okay, also known as Tutankhamun. I can't pronounce that name, but y'all know what I'm saying. Okay, is the most famous of all pharaohs. He was the son of the successor Akhenaten, grandson of Amenhotep III and Queen T, and the great-grandson of the royal matriarch Queen Thua. Archaeologist Howard Carter, opening of the intact tomb in the Valley of the Kings in 1922, rank among the most splendid discoveries of history 2010. Genetic fingerprints of the human, I lost my place. Fingerprint of his mummy determined that he died at an early age of 19 in a result of violence or an accident which incestual relationships of his parents and several genetic defects contributed. Tutankhamun actually carried a double dose of the allele named for him. Like most of the other genes in his family, it is Central African in ancient origin, but unlike the other markers, it has a sparse distribution outside of Africa, and the world average, the frequency is 4%. Still, Africans and African influenced populations, 1 in about 10 or about twice or 3 times likely to have it as rather than non-Africans. So clearly, there's a reason for African Americans to believe that King Tut or the ancient Egyptians were black. We're not just getting that out of nothing, you know. These are companies by white. These are white DNA companies. They aren't black companies. Now, these are the wigs that were worn by royal women in ancient Egypt. Okay? Now, these aren't Eurocentric type hair. These are clearly black inspired hair. Look at the dreadlocks. Look at the locks. Look at the woolly texture of the hair. Okay? These are clearly African hair. Let me go here. Here's more evidence of what I'm talking about. Okay, let's move it over here. Look at this person right here. This is a mummy. Look at the hair. Look at the hair. Okay? This is clearly African hair. Black hair. Nappy type hair. It is not silky, long, thin, fine hair. Okay? These are the wigs that are in the museum at Cairo. Okay? So that's one example of the fact that black people believe that the ancient Egyptians were in fact black. Here's another test that was done on pre-dynastic Egyptian mummies, and they came away and the results that they had sickle cell anemia. That is a disease that thought to have originated in West and Central Africa. Clearly lends credence to the idea that the ancient Egyptians were in fact black. The same could be said of the Olmec heads, the Olmecs. Look at this head here. Now I remember she presented, let me go back before I do that. Yeah, let's just stay here. We'll stay here. She focused on the braids. Let's put it this way. Let's do it this way. She focused on the braids of an Olmec head and tried to suggest that these were feathers. And but clearly these are braids. Okay? Now, I'm going to demonstrate to you why and how other people, white people, at the time these Olmec heads were discovered, gave their opinion of what the Olmec heads signified to them. Okay? Now, here we have, let's do this. Let's raise this up a little bit. Okay. Now, let's go down to the part where I want to talk about where it's highlighted. Okay. Now, this gentleman, his name is Jose Megar. He is a archaeologist from Germany. In 1905, he went to the site. And here's what he said. When we went, I was struck with surprise as a work of art. It is without exaggeration a magnificent sculpture. What astonished me was the Ethiopic type represented. I reflected that there had undoubtedly been Negroes in this country and that it has been in the first epoch of the world. So here's this gentleman who is not Afrocentric, who is white, a German at that, believed to him that these were black people. Okay? Now, here is a book called The Lost Colonies of Ancient America. And I'm going to see if I can find the page where I want to start at. But there's some interesting stuff that I want to point out. Okay, we're going to start in 1938. In 1938, a team of scientists from the Smithsonian Institution, University of California, and the National Geographic Society traveled to Tres Sabotes for the purpose of retrieving the Olmec stone head. Group leader Dr. Clarence Wellant told Ivan Van Stern, Professor Emeritus at Rutgers University, New Jersey, and a specialist in African visitors to pre-Columbian America, every one of the members on the team was absolutely convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was an African presence in ancient America. After they excavated the heads. Okay, Dr. Wellant and his colleagues found that the sculptor face, pronounced superciliarly, brow ridge, brow and broad nose with flaring nostrils were diagnostic characteristics of West Africans. The Tresophotos example they examined and others depicted supporting subtle details such as a distinct peripheral lip ridge, particular to the inhabitants of Benin, Guinea, Senegal, and Cape Verde Islands. From all the wide variety of stone more readily available for their monumental portrayals, the Olmec sculptors went out of their way to select black basalt, a deliberate choice on behalf of their subjects and skin color as part of all the other accurate features associated with these portrayals. Okay? Now, here we go on the braids. On the back of the head, fields continued, generally ignored by investigators, appear 7 Ethiopic-style hair braids virtually identical to African cornrows molds still worn today by many people of African descent in the Americas and in Africa itself. Now, these are white people saying this. This is not an Afrocentric thought here. After evidence like that, why wouldn't blacks believe that the Olmecs were black? Now, I want to make a clarification. I don't believe all the Olmecs were black. I believe it was a mixed society of different groups. Clearly, there was an Asian influence based on some of the artifacts that were also found. But clearly, at the head, apparently, to me, were Africans. Okay? And what makes that so true is that even after the Olmec civilization ended, the Mayans, they worship black gods. Okay? They worship black gods. So here we have, let's see if we can bring this up a little bit. Let's go here. I want to read something as part of this one here. Okay. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I'm going to read what's here. Several nations, such as the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas, worship black gods along with their other deities. And the Mayan religion particularly exemplifies the high esteem in which the Negroes were held. That was written by Harold G. Lawrence, The Crisis, in 1962. Okay? In the next paragraph, why were all indigenous religions and spiritual systems deemed as pagan or evil and were replaced during colonization? It would be hard to subjugate a people who were previously worshiping without replacing an old tradition with new ones. Let's examine some of the ancient gods that found right there in America before colonization. Many scholars have noted the black gods of the Americas are typically gods of medicine, healing, trade, music, and dance. According to these scholars, these associations are based on the traditions introduced by actual black people. Okay? That's what we're talking about, by actual black people. If you pull up, let's look at this image right here. This is clearly representative of a black African. Look at the lighter skinned people. Clearly, the African must have been held in high esteem compared to the other people. All right? So, as you can see, other imagery of black gods. Let's move this down. Clearly, there were black people in Mesoamerica. There's no question about that. Okay? Now, I mentioned something about living with animals. She mentioned something about we living with animals. But I didn't talk about who she probably was talking about. The Masai. These individuals, you could say, live with their cattle. They drink their milk. They drink their blood. But these Africans were not part of the transatlantic slave trade. So I'm sure these are the people that she was talking about. Okay? Now, what I find so ironic about this whole Olmec civilization beef that she has with African Americans is that I find these people very hypocritical. Okay? I find them very hypocritical because all of Latin America, for the most part, they're racist. To some degree, they're more racist than white people are today. White people, at least, if they're well, thanks to Donald Trump, they're starting to resurface. But at least you can't. At least you don't have to turn on the TV and see stereotypical garbage. But you could do that in Latin America and see black people being denigrated and made fun of. Okay, so let me read a little bit of this. Political rise of a former blackface comedian, Jimmy Morales, has again prompted concern about the prevalence of the offensive character in Brazil, Mexico, and elsewhere. Now, this Jimmy Morales, believe it or not, is running for president in Guatemala. And most of his career as a comic, he's been making fun of black people. And one of his characters, let me see if I can find it. Okay, well, that's not one of his characters, but they talk about what he has done. But here, let's go right here to this paragraph here, Peru. Peru perhaps has some of the continent's most racist characters. Negro Mama is a popular blackface television personality who wears a prosthetic nose, lips, black hairy gloves on his hands. His motto is, I might be blacky, but I have my little brain. Now, let's look at his character. And I'm not going to play the video, but look at this. A prosthetic nose and prosthetic lips. Now you look like an Olmec. Now, here's the hypocrisy of this young lady, Cultural Ancestral, is that she was probably laughing on TV at the black characters. But only because the civilization has those features, now she wants to embrace African features. So she finds a Mexican or a Guatemalan kid or whoever and try to match his face up to one of the colossal heads and try to suggest, oh, we're the same people. No, you're not. That's not the rule. That's the exception to the rule. You can always find an exception to the rule. But you can find thousands and thousands of black faces that can match right up with the colossal heads. But you won't find that in Latin America amongst the white Latinos. That's why this fool has to put on a prosthetic nose and lips to look African. So now he looks like this guy. Huh? He looks like him now. Because he put on his prosthetic nose and his thick lips. But you cannot get over the fact that this is an African. Because look at the hair. Where is your white Latino individual that you're going to put him up against this brother right here? Huh? You can't get around this. Explain this head. This is the African head. So there is no reason for you to get all, bent out of shape because some African Americans are claiming the Olmec culture is an African culture. Because it is. The evidence points to it. You cannot provide any evidence to say that it's not. All you can do is try to debunk it in the best way you can, but you're failing. Here's an example of what white people in the world does to black people. Here you have in South Africa, a 200-year-old city found in South Africa. Okay? 200,000 years ago. But you know what the white archaeologists are saying? It wasn't built by black folks. Black people don't even get credit for creations on their own soil. This guy called Michael Tellinger came up with this idea that aliens came and built this city. This is how bad it is. No one wants to give credit to black folks. They don't want to give credit to black folks for Egypt. They don't want to give black folks credit for the Olmec culture. And they don't want to give black folks credit for something right on their own soil. Let me play a little bit of this.
Kilometers west of Port Maputo, South Africa, the remains of a huge metropolis can be found. An ancient site measuring an astonishing 1,500 square kilometers in size, suspected by some to in fact once have been part of an even larger civilization, estimated by some to have been around 10,000 square kilometers in size, and constructed 160,000 to 200,000 years ago. The region is somewhat remote, and the stone circle remnants were only ever encountered by local farmers, who assumed they were made by some indigenous people within the past. Amazingly, or rather conveniently, modern archaeology has seemingly forgotten to investigate this amazing place.
That's enough. But it's just to demonstrate that this place is 200,000 years old, but white people will not give credit to black folks. This is how bad it is. So, I'm sorry, Miss Cultural Ancestral. The Olmec culture was in fact influenced by Africans, and that's just a fact. You're just going to have to get over it. And it's not because we're Afrocentric. We're going by the evidence. And I demonstrated some evidence for you. I gave you other sources that confirm what many African people believe, or African Americans believe, or Afrocentrics believe. You haven't provided no sources to back up what you have to say. So you're just going to have to accept or get over, because black people aren't giving up on the idea that the Olmecs were not black, no matter what you say. There's too much evidence, and you got to explain this head, okay? You come back to me when you could explain this brother right here. When you could give me a good explanation for him, then we could talk. Until then, this is a black African civilization. Okay?